Let's face it, we all run into conflict. But what if you had a secret toolkit to solve disagreements without all the drama and expense of going to court? Well, that's exactly what alternative dispute resolution, or ADR, is all about. And understanding these methods, it's not just useful, it's a total game changer.
Have you ever been there, locked in a disagreement with a landlord, maybe a client or even a neighbor, and you just feel stuck? It's so frustrating, it's stressful, and it feels like you're just hitting a brick wall over and over again. So your first thought might be, okay, I'll sue them. But then you picture it, lawyers, courtrooms, all that time and money. It's totally intimidating, right? Well, the good news is there's a much smarter path. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to break down what ADR actually is. Then, we'll dive into the three big methods: negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. And finally, we'll figure out how you can choose the perfect tool for your situation. All right, first things first. What in the world is ADR, and why are we calling it the smarter path? The clue is right there in the name: alternative dispute resolution. Simply put, it's a whole collection of ways to solve problems outside of a traditional courtroom. You can really think of it as your conflict resolution toolkit, ready to use before things escalate into a huge legal mess. Okay, let's grab the first and probably the most common tool from that kit: negotiation. This is all about the power of just talking to each other. At its core, negotiation is really just the art of a direct conversation. It's you and the other person sitting down to talk it out. There are no judges, no complicated procedures. It's just a focused chat to find a solution you can both agree on. And hey, this isn't about who can shout the loudest. A good negotiation follows a pretty clear path. First, you pinpoint the real issue. Then, and this is so important, you talk about not just what you want, but why you want it, your needs, your interests. Once that's on the table, you can brainstorm ideas and, hopefully, land on an agreement that works. The best parts about negotiation are its simplicity and the control you keep. It's super informal, it costs next to nothing, and most importantly, you are in the driver's seat. Nothing becomes final until both of you shake on it. But what happens when talking directly just isn't working? That's when you might need to bring in a neutral guide, which brings us to our second method: mediation. So, if negotiation is a direct conversation, think of mediation as a conversation with a referee. Now, this referee isn't there to declare a winner. Their job is to keep the conversation on track, productive, and fair for everyone involved. The whole thing kicks off when both sides agree to give it a shot. A neutral third person, the mediator, comes in to help you communicate and explore potential solutions. But here's the key: you still make the final decision. If you find a solution, the mediator helps write up the agreement. This is where mediation really shines. Everything you say is confidential, so people can be more open. The mediator is laser-focused on finding that common ground. And just like with negotiation, you and the other party still have the final say. You control the outcome. Okay, we've covered direct talks and guided conversations. Now, let's get into the most formal method in our toolkit, one that feels a bit like a private courtroom: arbitration. Yeah, you can really think of arbitration as a private mini-trial. It has a similar structure, but it's way faster and usually a lot cheaper than going to court. You're basically presenting your case to a neutral decision maker, the arbitrator, instead of a judge. The process here is definitely more buttoned up. You select an arbitrator who's often an expert in whatever you're disagreeing about. Each side gets to present their case and their evidence, and here is the huge difference. After hearing everything, the arbitrator makes the final decision. They don't just guide you, they decide for you. So the main thing to remember here is that shift in control. It's more formal, and a third party calls the shots with a decision that's usually legally binding. The big upside? It's still much faster and way more private than airing everything out in a public courtroom. So there you have it: negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. 3 really powerful tools. The big question is, how do you know which path is the right one for your specific problem? Well, it really all boils down to a spectrum of control and formality. Look here. With negotiation, you have complete control. In mediation, you get a guide, but you still control the outcome. But in arbitration, you hand that control over. See the pattern? As things get more formal, your direct control over the decision goes down. And this, right here,
is why all of this really matters. Understanding these options, knowing when to talk it out, when to call in a guide, or when to get a private decision is an incredible advantage. It can literally save you a fortune in time, money, and let's be honest, a whole lot of stress. Knowing this stuff transforms you. You stop just reacting to conflict and you start having a strategic plan to solve it. So the next time you're in a disagreement, the question isn't just, what do I do? It's which tool am I going to choose?